Morning, Randy. How are you today?
Good. It's Tuesday and we're here for coffee talk again. And I've already had my maximum limit of 2 cups. So that's why I do not have my cup on my desk here. How about you?
I'm working on my second one.
There you
Working on my
go.
second one.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to maybe take a dive into just this whole investigation of the music that we play and what we do as musicians to prepare. I know you've been doing a lot of honor bands lately, and you have a process that I'm sure that you change from time to time. We discussed a little bit of that with Shirley on the webinar this month, as far as the mental process of that for the performers. And a colleague of mine was having a conversation recently with a colleague of theirs asking about what they did to prepare for rehearsals and this idea of interpretation and things like that. And the comment was made, well, I'm really kind of scared to listen to resource recordings because I don't want to adopt somebody else's interpretation. And I'm just curious, I know how I feel, and I certainly can share that, but I'd like to kind of start with you. What do you do in terms of expanding your horizons? If you're doing a piece that maybe was based on a vocalese or was based on source material from orchestral music or vocal music, how far into the weeds do you get with it? And what, in the end, what's the end game for you? And I know what your answer is going to be, I'm pretty sure, because I know you so well, and I know what my answer is going to be, and I know they're probably going to be very similar, but I think it'd be really interesting for our listeners to hear this, because first of all, we do have to get to that point, right? I mean, you agree? We have to get to that point where we're actually doing some research?
Absolutely. And the problem comes in, full transparency here with my crazy schedule. And I know you feel the same way. I mean, a lot of times I'm getting ready for honor bands at the last minute. So I'm marking my scores on the planes, which is not the best process, but at least I go in having them marked and ready to go. And there were too many times when I was teaching in high school that I flew by the seat of my pants. And I've learned just through experience how much easier and much more calm your rehearsals will be if you have all that prepared ahead of time. I did an honor band in Texas a few weeks ago, and for whatever reason, I had some extra time and was able to really mark my scores, and it made the rehearsal so much more enjoyable. And I think the performance was better because of it. But as far as listening to reference recordings, it's just my personal opinion. I think it's critical. I only understand so much about certain types of literature. And if it's someone like a Eugene Corcoran or a Steve Davis or a Mallory Thompson recording or something like that, I trust those people, and if I hear them do something, or Ray Kramer even, or something like that, I'm like, yeah, that's probably the way I want to do it. I was talking to Lowell Graham this last summer about one of the recordings he did. And he was just talking about the fact that it was so important for him to listen to the reference recordings, but then you listen to his recordings and he really does his own thing. But I think probably wouldn't have done that if he hadn't have understood the reference recordings beforehand. So I think it's critical. I try to listen to at least 2 versions of every piece. And, with some of the newer pieces, you may not find 2 versions out there. But with some of the older pieces, it's pretty easy to find a lot of recordings, and they're very different. You and I were just talking about Chester Overture a minute ago, and you can find 10 different versions of that right away without even trying. So I think it is important to get in there, do that score work, and it's something that I've learned to love to do. I used to hate to do it. I really enjoy it now. I think it's because the pressure is on me, because I have such a short time to rehearse with these groups. But boy, without the recordings, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah, and talking to a lot of composers such as yourself, so many of them have learned from studying other composers' scores and learning to orchestrate differently because of it. I know you and I have talked about that before. There's just a value to it. In my current situation, having an ensemble, I'm just thankful to have an ensemble to conduct every week. And I know you get that by working with a lot of honor groups. Having the opportunity to do that and just investigate that investigatory aspect is it can get pretty exciting when you start hearing different interpretations and you go, I can buy that. I mean, and I had a mentor one time that said the only bad interpretation is no interpretation at all.
Agree.
And so I think we would encourage you, I think Richard and I are both basically saying is do your research and don't be afraid to try different things and experiment a little bit and go with whatever your group and your intuition tells you. And I think in most cases, some people are very contest worthy, especially if you're playing one of the old war horses, like a E-flat military suite by Holst or Chester Overture by Schumann. People get a little nervous about making those changes, but I think if it's most adjudicators, especially by today's standards, are going to be listening to whether or not it's musical. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And the thing about making changes, I might just real quickly mention marches, because one of the things that Ray Kramer taught me was to take some risks with marches. And I do a version of his honor now with honor bands that Ray taught me how to do. And it's like almost an instantaneous standing ovation at the end of it, because of the little changes that he taught me to do. And so, I think what you just said is really important, making sure that you're making the best decisions for your group, the group that's in front of you. So they're going to have their best possible performances. And if someone doesn't agree with your interpretation, it's certainly not the end of the world. If you did your research and did your work, nothing wrong with your own interpretation.
Absolutely. So think about that as you work your way through the rest of the week. We certainly hope you're having a successful second semester at your place of employment, your school district, and we wish all of you the best for continued success.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.